Shall we start?
Let's do it. Thank you, Kateryna. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted to be here with what is obviously a very distinguished panel to have a really interesting conversation that frankly couldn't be more diverse, which is a great start. So why do we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion? There are many who would say this is a social issue and we need to address it with social consciousness in mind. Others would say it's a motivation to be looking for equality in everything that we do. Finally, there are ethical implications about diversity, equity, and equality. And we could spend hours, I suspect, on those. But I want to talk about, besides all of those, why you want to have diversity in your workplace in particular. And we're really talking about professional workplaces here. Why is that? Because diverse companies, businesses, organizations perform better. Simple answer. So let me give you some ways in which that works. Firstly, they have higher profits, and who doesn't want that, right? So teams that are better at solving problems and making decisions generate a competitive advantage and make more money for organizations, right? So a 2018 study of 1,000 companies across 12 countries by McKinsey & Co. found that companies in the top quartile for gender diversity were 21% more likely to experience above average profitability. Get this though. Meanwhile, ethnic and cultural diversity resulted in a 33% increase in such performance. So that's pretty exciting. Now let's think about something we all spend a lot of time, our talent, engagement, employee engagement and retention in particular. When employees in your team feel included, they're likely to be more engaged. Research from Deloitte Australia found that teams that are focused on diversity and inclusion tend to deliver the highest levels of engagement. And when employees are engaged or they feel accepted, valued, empowered, they're happier, they're more motivated, they're more productive, and they're easier to retain. As a result, companies with greater diversity tend to have lower turnover rates, meaning reduced recruitment and training costs. Diversity within your team can boost its reputation and help you attract better talent. Businesses that are seen to build and promote diversity in the workplace are viewed as more ethical, socially responsible, and therefore make it easier for many people to relate to them. It opens the doors to new markets, new customers, new business partners. Workplace diversity is especially beneficial when attracting top talent from a different talent pool. In other words, in another survey by PwC this time, more than 80% of the participants said that an employer's policy on diversity, equality, and inclusion is an important factor when deciding whether or not to work for them. Well, in the seemingly tight talent markets in which we in the legal industry are currently working, evident rising compensation in the talent wars that we're seeing, surely this sort of silver bullet is not one we can ignore. And finally, diversity and inclusion can lead to increased creativity and innovation. Yes, I said innovation. And innovation is that magic word that we're all so keen to demonstrate to our clients and indeed to our talent. Bringing in people who have different views on the same issues means you're more likely to get a melting pot of fresh ideas, thus improving the creativity of your team and boosting its capacity for innovation. A study in 2018 by the Boston Consulting Group looked at 1,700 companies across 8 countries. Their findings: organizations with more diverse management teams have 19% higher revenues due to innovation. Problem solving and decision making also benefit from diversity. Numerous studies have shown that team members with diverse backgrounds will bring diverse solutions to the table, a process that leads to more informed decision making and improved results. Harvard Business Review found that diverse teams are able to solve problems faster than teams of cognitively similar people. In fact, a white paper from an online decision-making platform, Cloverpot, found that when diverse teams made a business decision, they outperformed individual decision makers up to 87% of the time. So the business case is there. The ethical case, the social case, we often hear, we know they favor diversity. So why is it so hard? And why are we struggling to deliver on diverse and inclusive workplaces? Well, I'll tell you my view, and then of course we're going to get to hear from this fabulous panel. And that's that diversity, well, it's a journey, right? Of education, of experience, of enlightenment, of empirical evidence, and most of all in context. Diversity, equity, and inclusion means something different to each of us, to each company, and frankly, in each country. And that's what I'm so excited that we're going to get to talk about here today. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Ekaterina, the wonderful Ekaterina who's done so much here, to introduce our panel and talk more about some of these concepts.
Thank you, Tamara. Well, as Tamara said, it's been a really popular and important topic recently in the past 10 years. And I think before we start this discussion, it's important to establish what diversity and inclusion mean. Diversity is the full spectrum of human differences, gender, culture, preferences, abilities. Everybody has unique backgrounds, their strong sides and character traits, which can help develop an outstanding business strategy. And if we involve all those diverse people into our designing our business concept, we succeed more because we get more diverse ideas. Inclusion is a feeling of belonging to a culture and environment. It encourages employees to fully participate if they can fully be themselves in their workplace. Basically, it means that they are comfortable in being in their team. Today, we have a really great panel of 5 speakers, which I'm very happy to introduce. Marta Jimeno, Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion at Siemens Gamesa. Siemens Gamesa is a leading supplier of wind power solutions and a key player and pioneer in the renewable energy sector. Marta has an extensive experience in setting and implementing diversity policies, not only in Europe, but in other regions, because Siemens Gamesa has offices in a few countries and regions. Kateryna Gupalo is a partner and the head of white-collar crime and tax and customs litigation practices of the Ukrainian law firm Arzinger. Kateryna is also vice chair of the IBA Business Crimes Committee, a member of ABA and Ukrainian Bar Association. Carine Tohme is a managing partner of a Lebanese law firm from Beirut. Carine's law firm is really famous and unique because it's a 100% female law firm. And we have the Sergey Lepetan, which I believe is going to be joining us soon. Sergey is the head of legal practice at Sunpharma. It's a pharmaceutical company which has offices and presences in every region. And of course, we have our sort of unexpected guest who jumped in a few days ago, Vlad Zabrodin, managing partner of Capital Legal Services, Russia. Vlad is co-chair of the Law Firm Management Conference in Moscow that will take place this December. This pre-conference talk is actually part of our preparations for the Law Firm Management Conference. Vlad is also vice chair of Poverty and Social Development Committee, a member of the American Bar Association. And all of these wonderful panelists will be today here with us to share their views and perspectives on diversity and inclusion. So I suggest we start our discussion with the first question. What is diversity and inclusion in your country and region? Tamara, please, yielding the floor to you.
Thank you. Well, like I said, it's a journey, right? So what I think we want is pick out a little bit with the panelists where they are both in their organizations and also in their respective countries on this journey. Marta, I'd like to start with you. I know you have some very strong views, so I'm delighted to get to hear them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the introduction and thank you for inviting me representing Siemens Gamesa in this event. Is a real pleasure for me. Thank you so much. And yes, of course, the concepts of diversity and inclusion themselves, as you were mentioning at the beginning, often mean very different things in different countries around the world. And even these concepts vary widely among companies. For Siemens Gamesa, promoting diversity has been part of our culture from the beginning. We have more than 26,000 employees spanning nearly 60 countries. Operating at this scale brings an elevated level of responsibility to everything we do. We need a workforce that is more representative of the local communities where the company operates, and a workplace that creates a sense of belonging to everyone. However, as Ekaterina was saying, diversity by itself does not equal a fair playing field. Diversity equals representation, and thus diversity only has a meaning if it is accompanied by inclusion. Inclusion is the connection that attracts and retains diverse talent, gives equal access and opportunities, encourages participation, and fosters creativity, innovation, and client focus. Our activities currently focus on 3 pillars. The first one is bringing more diversity to the company. We look to hire people with different abilities, backgrounds, and a wide range of experiences. Second, advance a culture of inclusion and belonging by fostering a work environment that welcomes the different perspectives and allows for every employee to have a full sense of belonging within our organization. And finally, build the work environment for the future based on flexible work arrangements, family-friendly policies to better reconcile personal and professional commitments, and equal opportunities practices allowing that everyone can advance in employment on equal terms.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Kateryna, I want to turn to you and let you tell us a little bit about where you are in the journey.
First of all, thanks for inviting me to this panel. For me, this topic is very important. Also, I would say that Ukraine is I would say that it's the beginning of its road to implementation and to understanding diversity and inclusion. So we are on the beginning of that road that you, Tamara, mentioned. Because if, for example, you ask different people what do they understand, how they understand this concept of diversity and inclusion, and even I recall first discussion within our law firm that you see there is such a concept, let's think about it, let's think about implementation of policies, etc., etc. So the first that pops up is, of course, gender diversity, racial diversity, sexual orientation, and some minority of people are thinking more ahead. That's also about its language. It's also about for I don't know how for other jurisdictions, but for our countries, it's important issue family status, because women all quite often complain that nobody wants to take like women who recently got engaged and married, because she would be expected to have children and she won't be able to work full hours. Of course, religion, issues of religion, political views, age, etc. So unfortunately, I would say that this understanding is quite superficial, and it's not only luckily we went forward, and we are now developing our all possible aspects. But even I was discussing this issue also with partners of other law firms, and I see that people are still focused on gender racial diversity, sexual orientation, like these three basic pillars, and they are not closing, opening, sorry, their eyes that, sorry, we have a lot of other categories. And even, for example, if to see in our labor code, we have this provision, a huge list of different categories that like ban on discrimination on those different categories. So sometimes for lawyers, it's very useful to reread current legislation, which is more advanced than the practice.
That's really helpful, Kateryna. I think it really highlights that difference in what diversity might mean. And again, I always come back to my own colleagues in Asia who tell me that in fact diversity for them would be a white man. We don't have a lot in our business, and so that's what it looks like. So I think we have to keep remembering where Ekaterina was at the beginning. Diversity is the difference point. That's what we're really after. So Vlad, I want to follow up with you and talk a little bit about not only your organization but your perceptions of where Russia is on the journey.
Yeah, truly representation of diversity in this panel, right? So from that point of view, I think it's quite interesting, and it's quite important, because I believe, and I fully agree with Kateryna, the perception of the diversity in this part of the world was very focused on things that are not probably exactly relevant to some other countries in the world, and vice versa. So in some cases, when we're talking and raising these issues, for example, within our firm, a group of friends, or just colleagues dealing with some particular issues, we are not probably seeing full level understanding of what diversity means, because as you're completely right, Tamara, for some countries, white male or white female may be a kind of diversity. And from that perspective, my personal view of the situation is very much connected with the fact that, first of all, the diversity itself is not properly identified, or is not properly understood, let me put it this way. Because we're trying, we're thinking in categories, and categories may not be applicable in the particular case, in the particular circumstances. So as a result of this, we're kind of, rejecting the things that are just misunderstood or misinterpreted for the particular region and for the particular company or for the particular country. And as a result of this, instead of, receiving reasonable support or kind of, at least, proper understanding, we're receiving some kind of, negative emotions, especially because, sometimes we're getting this kind of approach from the point of view of the people who are talking about diversity that is completely not relevant. So when, for example, you're receiving the message that is not kind of, mixing with your own understanding of the reality, I mean, there are two things. Either you change your understanding of the reality, or you kind of, change the messenger, because technically it has to be properly delivered. And in my personal understanding, diversity is not promotion of a particular group, but frankly speaking, a kind of equivalent of equality that is not connected with person being attributed to a particular group, gender, sexual orientation, or whatever. So to very much extent, and I think that in our country with Kateryna and with Ekaterina, we are always, seeing some kind of, contradictions. For example, when we're seeing movies with people that are not representing the true color of skin, for example, of the period of people of that period of time, we see quite a number of, negative comments. And on the other side, I'm usually asking the question, but is the person a good actor? Why wouldn't we see on this situation from the point of view, not really function, but in some cases skill, in some cases, reality that is actually attributed to the particular, for example, acting of the person, versus, trying to see the difference. We will always be different. And from that point of view, I think we don't see, and we shouldn't be kind of, be afraid of this difference, but we should actually understand what is the value behind this difference and how this value actually is benefiting, the world, the firm, the kind of the population in general. So getting back to your initial question in the kind of very probably short way, I think that diversity is a kind of, freedom and change, versus, non-diversity, non-acceptance of diversity is a conservatism. in some parts of the world, this conservatism is quite understood because people are looking for stability and people are looking for some kind of, understandable, reasonable changes versus, just change as a kind of, promotion of the change for without any particular reason. But if we're able to understand why is this change important, what is this change bringing to all of us, how exactly it's kind of, connected with the lives of the other people, I think we'll be getting much bigger, much better understanding and much bigger support of these ideas that in general, I personally believe are absolutely fundamental for the benefit of this world and for the kind of further development of, not just, our profession, but also for the business and for the population. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlad. I think there's a lot in that. I certainly take away the idea that, diversity is really still about difference and not about necessarily, identifying just the difference, but valuing the difference. So Carine, let's talk about it in Lebanon and indeed in your business and how you perceive it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tamara. Look, I think as Sergey was saying, there's a big difference in what diversity is between several countries and regions. For Lebanon, if I would think of a diversity, again, there's no clear concept of diversity here in Lebanon and inclusion in general, whether at the level of the law firms, at the level of businesses in general, and at the level, to some extent, at the level of the region as well, the Middle East, let's say. So we're more, if you think of diversity here, and I'm sure you've heard about Lebanon a lot lately, since we're having all the problems of the world in one country. It's been a couple of years. So we have this these several confessional, so let's say diverse religious communities coexisting and living together in one country, a lot of them, so 18. And when we think of diversity here, we might think first of these different, let's say, religious communities coexisting and living together in the same country. We also might think gender diversity, and we might, to some extent, because I mean we're still a little bit behind in terms of sexual orientation discussions in the country, because it's still a taboo discussion, because we still have laws that can criminalize some sexual orientations per se. So this is not really a discussion we have, or I mean we're pretty much behind in this regard. In terms of racial, or let's say nationality, or difference of cultures, the issue, we're a very open country. The issue in the country is, since we've been having a lot of problems, political, security, also several wars, we don't have a lot of opportunities to mix a lot in terms of diversity, let's say having several nationalities or cultures coexisting in let's say businesses or law firms in Lebanon, knowing as well that the profession per se, so the law profession in Lebanon is not really open to receive or to have foreign lawyers / law firms being based in Lebanon. So the legislation here is not really open about it. So we don't have this opportunity, to have lawyers from several nationalities or different cultures in the country per se. So this is thinking about Lebanon as Lebanon. Now, of course, in the region or in the Middle East region, or if we think, for example, if we think in the UAE, there were a lot of advancements. So there's a lot of development in terms of gender discrimination, because there were some laws that were issued lately that to ensure more inclusive rights in general to women. And I don't know where this sound comes from. Yeah, and for example, in businesses lately, there have been some laws whereby you have to in some in the UAE to have a woman, for example, in the board of directors. So you have to have a woman, and these laws have been enacted lately and are going to be put in practice, I guess, soon. We know as well the latest developments in Saudi, for example, in terms of gender. Although, I mean, the situation, it doesn't mean that in terms of gender discrimination, it doesn't mean that it still doesn't happen in some, like, for example, religious communities whereby it's still difficult for women to work with men. However, legislation is being, is progressing in these countries. In Saudi, for example, we have, there is an issue of like human rights in general with regards to mine. Know that some nationalities are not really treated well in general. I mean, in terms mostly the workers, let's say, quote unquote. So the situation in the region is very diverse. There's no one meaning, and there is a progress that's being done. But in general in the region, there's no diversity and inclusion policies per se that we see in a very clear way and being imposed, let's say, in the business world or even in our legal industry. This is about the country. I'm not sure, Tamara, if you would like me to talk about the firm as well at this stage or not.
I think we'll save it because I think we'll have a couple of opportunities to do that, Carine, and I want to make sure we move on. I think Ekaterina has a couple more questions for our panel, so let's we'll come back to that. But thank you. That was a nice whistle-stop tour of most of the Middle East, which was super. Thank you.
Thank you very much for introducing your ideas and perspectives of the regions where you live and the countries where you live. The next question would be, does your company pursue diversity and inclusion policies, and in what ways? And I would like to ask Marta, Marta, how do you cope with such a big regional difference? You have so many offices at your company and you're a global head, and probably every single one of your office has their own cultural background and understanding and ideas. I guess it's not very easy to adapt your policy to all of those offices. So I would like to ask you, how do you cope, and what's the secret of implementing these values in all of your different regional offices?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, there's no secret at all. Our diversity and inclusion policy sets the framework and the principles that are common to all the groups, companies, and societies. The purpose of the policy is to promote equal opportunities, diversity, inclusion, respect, dignity in the company's culture and in all the company's policies, and especially in HR practices regarding recruitment, hiring, promotion, career development, compensation, and finally termination. In terms of the policy and how it is implemented in our regional offices, we have adopted a global mindset in order to remain consistent also with our company's culture of building one Siemens Gamesa and work together productively towards diversity and inclusion. The principle that the policy promotes, such as equal opportunities, zero tolerance towards harassment and unlawful discrimination, the advancement of women at all levels of the organization apply equally in all the regions and locations. And yet we must balance this global mindset with the regional perspective, because as we have seen and we were talking before, the concepts of diversity and inclusion themselves often mean very different things in different countries around the world. So diversity management in this international context cannot be one size fits all proposition. We recognize that in order to implement a successful global strategy, we need to empower local regions and take account of the cultural differences between the headquarters and the global offices. We encourage the creation of regional diversity and inclusion councils comprised of engaged employees at regional and country level. They support implementation of the global strategy and global agenda of initiatives at the regional level. They also align and connect with the employee resource groups to identify and implement local initiatives that are relevant for the region in alignment with the company's strategy. Therefore, in addition to the global agenda of initiatives, the regions or these regional councils implement activities that are tailored to the needs of their employees. We combine this global approach with a multinational approach to diversity to combine everything and make sure that our diversity journey has this global mindset, but is also tailored to the specific needs of the employees in the different regions. Thank you.
So basically you have a global strategy based on general human values that every human has and every office has, and tailor them to specific cultural differences and backgrounds and history. That's really a global strategy, I would say. We can see how it's overwhelming and covers a lot of things. Thank you very much, Marta. Question for Kateryna. Kateryna, does your company pursue a specific outline diversity and inclusion policy? And if yes, in what ways?
Thanks. So as I mentioned, premier focus is on gender equality, because it's first it comes into mind, and in this aspect we are, in comparison to other law firm, we are quite advanced, because before this presentation I made mini research. I took top 20 of Ukrainian law firms, and I saw that percentage of women partners is average on market about 23%. We have like 36% of women partners, which is above the average. And until recently, we used to be 50 because we were like 8 partners, 4 of them women. But our recent newly obtained partners, unfortunately, they are men. Sorry. So they worsened our statistic, but except of just pure figures, we joined a couple of initiatives, which is UN Global Compact initiative in respect of gender equality, and also we signed a declaration on gender equality of UNFPA, and our diversity and equality policy is now being drafted, and also it's not approved yet, but I can comment that it's not only about gender, that we are trying to include issues as LGBT, age, and other categories that would be more advanced for Ukrainian market. I believe that for UK, US, it's like minimal standard, but for Ukraine, I assume we would be one of the pioneers.
Thank you very much. I believe the same concept goes in Russia. We have a very similar understanding of what diversity and inclusion is. And we have Sergey join us right now. Thank you very much, Sergey, for being able to join. Would you please briefly tell us what diversity and inclusion in India is, and specifically in your company, Sunpharma?
Sergey, I think you are on mute still. There we go.
You're still on mute, Sergey.
Sergey, you're on mute.
My God. You see my gestures, but you understand that I said hello. So, yes, my name is Sergey Lepetan. I'm a legal director of Sunpharma Russia. Just a few words about the company itself. Yes, as Ekaterina mentioned, yes, it's an Indian company, but it's nowadays it's a multinational company because it's yes, it was established in India, and it still has its corporate head office in Mumbai. But nowadays, it's a pretty big international company, having more than 30,000 employees working in about 150 countries. And we have production facilities in about 45 countries. So you can imagine that we work practically at every continent on our Earth, and that's why we have a lot of, let's say, diversity issues. You know, as for India itself, you know, it's a unique country having more than 1.4 billion population, and it's only official languages. It have about 30 official languages in the country. I don't say about dialects and other things. So, and another important thing is that it is the country of many religions like Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, of course, Buddhism. So it's a country of real religious and cultural diversity. And one of the slogans of India is unity in diversity. That's why it's the country which cannot exist without diversity. So that's why it's also important issue for our company as well, especially when it became multinational companies. That's why it's stated in our code of ethical code that it regards diversity as or its personnel as a real asset, as an important asset, and it's really committed to provide equal opportunity to all employees, and it won't tolerate any illegal discrimination or harassment. Because first, because it's an Indian company, and second, because it became a multinational company, and we cannot imagine our work in the other regions, in the other countries, without taking into consideration diversity issues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sergey. Just a few notes. I have read Sunpharma's diversity policy, and one thing I found very interesting was that some of your pillars of the diversity and inclusion policy are gender, nationalities, religions, castes, and domains. This really surprised me. At the same time, it felt really natural because we know basically the structure of the Indian society, that for hundreds of years, India has had this very strict caste and domain system, and this is the unique understanding of diversity and inclusion, and it shows us how different it can be in diverse countries and regions. Thank you very much, Sergey, and we're moving on to the next important question. Why are diversity and inclusion a business case? Tamara, turning over to you.
Sure, and I might start with Carine, because I know we didn't get a chance to talk about your own policies, but I'll start with that, and also how you think they impact on your business. And obviously, as a managing partner, you're going to have some good thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. So yeah, with regards to our firm, I mean, we've come, of course, we've come from far, because when the firm was founded more than 40 years ago, our founder used to indeed, let's say, talking about gender diversity, used to be reluctant to have women lawyers at the office for the reasons that Kateryna mentioned earlier on, related to the time that a woman would be giving her family, and so and therefore, since we're very hardworking in this firm, like everyone else, I guess here, there was no chance for people to really have, you know, a personal life per se. So just potentially the idea of having potentially a family was kind of an obstacle when this firm was first created. But then with time, I think women proved themselves, and at the end we ended up being a 100% female firm. I just want to just mention that it is not because we want to exclude men. So it's because based on the, you know, equality of chances, we give everyone, and it's within our values and our policy that we ended up being women. There are several demographic reasons as well for that here. We have more men leaving the country than women. We have a bigger number of women in the country, even in the judiciary and in the legal profession. Lawyers, we're now every year having more women lawyers than men, new lawyers in the profession. So there's a whole demographic reason or situation behind that. And it's just that we're not really finding good men. So I don't know, Vlad, Sergey, if anyone would like to come and spend some time with us, we would be very happy. We're looking to have men at the firm, and very happy to have them. So it's not a policy per se to have, you know, 100% women. We don't believe in that in terms of excluding men. At the contrary, we believe in collaborating. This is thinking of gender discrimination or diversity. For the rest, and I think I've already mentioned those, we're a very open firms, again, within the policy, with regards to all confessions, or let's say religious communities, which is one of the diversity maybe concepts you can think of here, as well as any other form of diversity, provided that they are, you know, existing in the country, because we're very limited in terms of maybe diversity because of the reasons I mentioned earlier on. So this is in a couple of words with regards to the firm. Now, for the question related to whether it affects and how our business, we've never felt actually, and we had this discussion with the team last week here in preparation to today. We just wanted to have their feedback and see what they think, or if there's anything I missed. But we, first as women, first in Lebanon, we've never felt any discrimination or any issue in our business with the clients, with the authorities, with all types of work or services we provide. So we've never experienced that. Well, we're an open country in general, but so I expected to have some comments which are more in this sense here, but no comment from the team. Now, of course, as I was saying, you might meet a client that is of a certain religious community that has these, you know, certain beliefs, and that can, you know, not look at you as a woman during a meeting because it's not something that they should do, etc. So there could be these situations, but it was never something that would be an obstacle per se with clients or in the environment, in the legal environment. As a positive, I mean, it was always positive for us, and we always see the positive aspect of it. Well, I think that's it for me.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Marta, I want to come to you because you are in corporate, and, you know, certainly for many of us in law firms, we are definitely feeling the push by our clients to deliver more diverse teams for lots of the reasons we've talked about. Just tell me a little bit about how you handle suppliers, vendor, that sort of vendor management, and how you look at diversity and inclusion in the context of that. So
yeah, sure. Our business partners obviously they plays a key role in our sustainability-oriented value chain. You were also mentioning at the beginning, we all know intuitively that diversity matters. It is also increasingly clear that it makes sense in purely business terms. Therefore, we expect our business partners to share our commitment towards diversity, inclusion, and equal opportunities. We have established a specific policy governing supplier relations to ensure that working conditions in the company's supply chains are safe, workers are treated with respect and dignity, and that business operations with suppliers are ethical, social, and environmentally responsible. In particular, we expect our business partners to comply with the principles of respect of human rights and dignity of all people, promoting equal opportunities and equal treatment of employees, zero tolerance towards harassment and unlawful discrimination, and respect for cultures and communities in the areas in which operations are made, and foster their economic and social development. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. And I just want to say, I know we have some fabulous participants and attendees watching. If you do have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I can't promise we'll have time to answer all of them or even any of them because we're hearing some great things from our panelists, but it'd be nice to see what kinds of things are striking you. With that, Kateryna, let me come on to you and see if I can kind of understand your expectations and understanding of the business case. I know, and you've talked a little bit about where you are on the journey, but maybe how important do you think this sort of business case side of things, is for you?
Frankly speaking, like we started to talk about diversity inclusion policies far beyond we saw some signs that it might have some implication on our business. I will explain. For example, from colleagues from other jurisdictions, I heard that in some tenders there are requirements for diversity and inclusion. For local matters, I still haven't seen such requirements in tenders, or even if a client is requesting for some help, not yet. But again, we are participating in also in international projects, cross-border projects. So I believe that might be a case. And even if we are like our managing partner, he's a man, but going with him on business meetings abroad, he always underlines that we have like 4 female partners. So he really feels that it would differentiate us from other law firms. So I would say that first of all, it's point of differentiation. It would makes you what makes other to remember you amongst all whole list of business law firms all over the world. Also it has potential to become business case because, as I mentioned, as it's already became requirement in other jurisdictions on diversity and inclusion policies, so it might be a case with some time in Ukraine. And also what I noted while preparing submissions for legal rankings, I noted that they established quite new, relatively new chapter, and they are asking law firms to explain their diversity and inclusion policies and how they are how they work on practice. So it really becomes a topic in Ukraine. And with the last factor, I would recall it's also like point of diversification also for in the market for hiring talented people, and especially talented women, to attract them to our law firm, because like one of you who thinks about how it's to be a woman in this man's world.
Perfect. That's really helpful. Sergey, I want to turn to you because you do at Sunpharma have these, really strong policies, and I can only assume that that's not purely sort of morally, ethically driven, but that actually you do have a real sense of the business, maybe some of the advantages that have been talked about earlier, the business case for some of that. Maybe you could describe your thinking on that to us.
Yes, Tamara, I have an experience of work with pharmaceutical companies for about 10 years, and I must say that an example of Sunpharma is pretty good example for discussion at this particular panel with such topic, because yes, in spite of the fact that Sunpharma exists from the beginning of the 80s. At the very beginning, it was a pure local Indian company. It became international-wise since around maybe a decade ago, especially, and when 6 years ago, Sunpharma acquired another big company, Indian big company, Ranbaxy. But Ranbaxy was a real international company. Most of its business it made abroad. And after such an acquisition, Sunpharma grew from pure local company into the international one. And I can see that how it's getting adopted to all these international standards. For example, just on my eyes, there have appeared an ethical code of the company. And I see how it is these issues, including diversity and inclusion, since they just appear, and company every year is starting paying much more attention to the things like this. For example, much more women have appeared in the management of the company since that time, because I can compare with my experience in the other companies. For example, just very personal experience when I have appeared, I was just hired by Johnson & Johnson, and during my first day of employment, I have a so-called cross-functional meeting, and there was about 15 people at this meeting, and I was surprised. It was a big surprise for me that among these 15 people, practically 20 or 13 of them have been women, and for me, it was really a big surprise, because before I have never seen such many women in the management of the company. So you see, I may compare it with the situation Sunpharma, and I see that it's just getting adopted to all these diversity things.
That's perfect. Thank you, Sergey.
And just to finish the idea, as I see it's inevitable for any company which is going international wise, which is going to become a pure international company, because I have mentioned it has a lot of offices in many locations, and of course Sunpharma head office have to get adopted to this local legislation, local traditions. So it's inevitable.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Sergey, because we are all on different journeys, and different jurisdictions are clearly approaching diversity differently, as you'd expect. But that sort of legislative impetus that has driven some change has a effect when you start talking about then organizations that are in fact global or aspire to be. And so I think, you know, that's a brilliant point about, you know, how diversity's journey, you know, will continue to expand, in particular along with your international ambition. Vlad, I know that you feel there is a business case, part of why you and Kateryna are so passionately involved in this discussion. So maybe briefly, because I know Kateryna is very keen for us to get on to any questions, but also to wrapping up on time. But, you know, tell me your thoughts on this business case.
My personal position is that from that perspective, diversity is actually two words: culture and reality. So on one side, we're introducing culture in our firms, we're introducing culture in our relations with our clients, we're introducing culture all around the world, trying to establish new formats and new ideas and new kind of understandings that were not probably very similar to what we had 20 or 50 years ago, or even 100 years ago, of course. So I would say that the culture is changing over time, and all of things are actually changing in our mind. And as a result of this, we're making these changes in our companies and our firms. And with regards to the business, we need to understand that, for example, for the law firms, especially, you know, for the world law firms that are dealing with the international clientele, we cannot be not diverse, because to very much extent, then will not understand our clients. When our clients from very different jurisdictions comes to our door and, you know, asks us questions, in many cases, these questions need to be interpreted. And they need to be understood not only from the point of view of the person who is receiving the question, but also from the point of view who's making or raising the question. So what Sergey was saying, I think, is completely correct. So when we're actually facing the situation from a different perspective, we're actually not just, you know, maybe making better contact with our clientele, making better understanding of what's going on. We're actually changing ourselves to the better way of system of operations. We can disagree with something. We can agree with something. That's our decision. And, you know, we're all human beings. There's a kind of, you know, independent decision making to some extent, at least. And from that point of view, I think it's important that we are able to kind of, you know, to accept this diversity in our relations inside of the firm, within the businesses, within our communities, and of course, even within our families. So all these things are actually should be considered as something that is helping us to develop, helping us to progress, helping us to change in a better way. And then, you know, probably that would be a good business case for our clients as well. That's in a nutshell.
And it's a good nutshell. Thank you very much. Well, I think this has been such a fabulous discussion. I know we're running out of time, rather unfortunately, but Ekaterina, maybe turn over to you, give us some concluding thoughts and close out this fabulous panel.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you for joining us. Well, continuing Vlad's thought about the culture changing, I would just like to say that there is some statistical researches that show that by 2030, millennials are predicted to make up more than 50% of the workforce, and the diversity and inclusion ideas are related, first of all, to millennials. This is the time when these ideas were born. This is the group of people who it was spread through, and millennials are different from previous generations. They are more straightforward, self-confident, honest, and they want to feel valued, empowered at their workplaces. They want to feel valued and respected by their peers. And you can't any longer retain millennials with money and benefits that can be bought for money. Millennials want to work for ideas. They want to make a difference, influence ongoing processes, and societal development matters for them a lot. And a lot of millennials want to be part of that societal development. And talking about diversity and inclusion, we, as Tamara said, and as our speakers confirmed, diversity and inclusion ideas can let your businesses grow, because implementing them into your business strategy means that you can reach new markets, you can understand more of your clients, you can reach some heights that you haven't thought of before. And if your company pursues international development, your business cannot ignore diversity and inclusion ideas. And some businesses and some business owners ask this question, why should I care about human values? I'm here to make profit. I'm here to make money. This is what a business is. And I can say to that societal development and business influence each other, and they help each other develop and grow. And that synergy will lead to a fair society and sustainable businesses. So this is a win-win situation where nobody loses and everybody wins. And I think this is all for our today's discussion. Thank you very much, our great panelists, Tamara, all the participants who joined us. Thank you very much for being with us on this honest conversation. I think we have one question from Zoya. Diversity starts in the society in the first place. Our offices are, in a way, just a reflection of what is going on in our homes and our environment. Oh, sorry, this was not a question, this was a remark. Thank you very much, Zoya. Totally agree. Anyway, if there is any question, anybody would like to take the mic and ask their question live or type it in. We can also just follow up with any questions in case some come to your mind. Just feel free to email them to any of us, and we will be happy to answer and follow up.
Great. Well, with that, Ekaterina, I guess I would say thank you to all the millennials out there for the work that they're doing and pushing this, and the rest of us just aspire to be millennials. So that's fantastic, and thanks to this great panel. It's been really fun being with you all. And thank you, Ekaterina, again, for doing all the work to get us here.
Thank you, Tamara, for joining us and for your brilliant moderation and participation. And of course, all of the speakers, Marta, Carine, Sergey, Vlad, Kateryna. Thank you very much for this brilliant discussion.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And that's a great discussion, very stimulating and very, I think, thoughtful. And as a co-chair of the conference, I would like to invite everybody in the best case scenario offline, but in the worst case scenario online, to participate in this conference. That's going to be December 3rd, and that's Law for Management Conference of IBA, and we're going to have very great discussion about leadership changes and all these things that are surrounding us in the current world. So welcome to join and welcome to register for the conference. And thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you, Vlad. In case any information, please feel free to email me. I have all the information about the conference. We'll be happy to inform you about anything. Thank you very much again.
Thanks, ciao.